So here's the circuit board for the IMSA8080 replica. And we're looking actually at the back side of it. So this is going to be visible through the clear back Perspex panel or acrylic panel. You can see it's got the IMSA8080 microcomputer system logo duplicated from the front panel. And this is board revision, would you believe, version 3.4.1. There was some changes when I decided to include a lid for the kit. A lot of this microcontroller stuff in this corner had to be relocated. And even now, just as I was putting together the bill of materials, yep, I found a silkscreen error on what I would call the front side. So in all of these rows of LEDs, the address LEDs from LA0 up to LA15, except the second top one got the silk screening LS14. I guess because S and A are right next to each other on the computer keyboard, I just made a small typo. So it's not going to have any functional impact. It's just going to be a hallmark of the first 50 boards before I fix that little error up. So let's get into the first components. And I strongly suggest beginning with the PS RAM chip, which is surface mount here on the front, the micro SD card socket, which is also surface mount here on the front, and mounting the ESP32, which goes here on the back. And we just put in 2 rows of 20-pin female connectors, and the ESP32 plugs into those. So to have a small chance of doing some soldering of some through-hole work before we get onto the 2 surface mount components, let's bring the ESP32 in. And you'll notice, particularly when you turn it over, that these are supplied from the manufacturer with the last 3 through-hole pinholes empty. And that's because these connectors typically connect to the flash RAM inside the ESP32 chip down here at this end of the board, but they're also used to connect to the PS RAM. So we need to add headers to those 2. So in the kit, I've included a 20-pin header, and that's to cut up and use for tasks like this. So the first thing is to grab your side cutters, and we're going to take off 3 pins, and we need 2 sets of those. And then we might get around to using some of the other ones later. Ooh, I've cut that one a bit fine. I think we'll go again. So just be careful that you get your side cutters in the ridges between the pins, and that way you won't cut them too fine. Yep, there's the excess plastic that I left on from that last one. I'm just going to trim that off so it doesn't get in the way. Right, they look better. Now, if you really want to get things lined up nicely, you can always use the 2 female connectors to set things up. So you can drop these 3 pins into the end of the female connectors, like this, and then you can set them up on the bottom of the ESP32, just get things lined up and push them in, and that way you've got perfect alignment on each side. For where those extra 3-pin headers are going to go. Okay, so now for our small bit of through-hole soldering. Grab a piece of solder. Find it's a lot easier just to use short lengths of solder rather than trying to hold the reel. It's fairly weighty. Just clean the tip off on the wet sponge so it's nice and clean and ready to use. And the art with soldering is always to apply heat. Keep the heat on, bit of soldering, keep the heat there, and then take it away. Heat on, solder in, leave the heat there, take it away. But in the end, you want to ultimately apply as little heat as possible to get the job done. Of course, this is a rosin core and lead based solder. I think I'll just add a little bit more to those two. I was a little rushed, didn't put enough on. Yeah, so it's a rosin core flux impregnated lead based solder. I know lead's a little unfashionable in this day and age, but it's got a lower melting temperature. It's easier to work with than the lead free solders. For a small hobby kit, you're going to find it much easier. To avoid any solder fumes reaching my face, you can probably hear in the background some droning sound. I've got my desk fan set up, blowing across to blow any solder fumes away. Okay, well, with the ESP32 set up with those extra pins, we can carefully take the female headers off because we'll soon need those to put on the circuit board. And I'll just set the ESP32 aside. And we'll bring in the star of the next step, which is the PS RAM chip.